Now the latest ITV news from Granada reports with Lucy Meacock and Andy Bonner.
Hello there, welcome to Granada Reports. We're live with the latest across the northwest.
Hello, thanks for joining us on the programme this evening.
Demands for a full statutory inquiry into Lucy Letby's crimes grow, while a former boss of the Countess of Chester hits out at a cover-up culture in the health service.
There will be other killers in healthcare. How can we spot it more quickly? How can we really make people feel safe?
The couple found guilty of murdering a father from Wigan. He was shot in the face and doused in acid outside his home.
The new road policing unit taking countless guns and thousands of pounds worth of drugs off the streets in Lancashire.
Here we go, love.
The Big Dipper's big day. Happy birthday to Blackpool's famous old roller coaster, turning today.
And it's not a straightforward weather forecast to tell you as we head deeper into this week, and it gets trickier as the long weekend wears on. I'll tell you as much as I can a little later on.
First, the woman who took over the reins of the Countess of Chester Hospital just weeks after Lucy Letby was arrested is backing calls for a statutory inquiry and has hit out at cover-up culture within the health service.
Yes, Susan Gilby was chief executive at the hospital between August 2018 and December last year when she left the organisation. She's now claiming unfair dismissal. She said she was shocked to find out how consultants who'd raised concerns about Letby were treated.
Tonight we'll hear from the man tasked with investigating complaints about the NHS. He's written to the Health Secretary to demand a statutory inquiry.
In that letter, Rob Behrens, the Health Service Ombudsman, says the culture of fear in NHS trusts is not isolated to this case, with leaders regularly dismissing concerns of staff.
Andrew Misra has the latest.
How do the families forever haunted by Lucy Letby's despicable crimes get the accountability and answers they so deserve?
I was an intensivist, so...
Dr Gilby took over at the Countess of Chester Hospital just after Letby was arrested. 5 years on, she still can't believe what went on there.
It's incomprehensible. I just cannot fathom what evil makes somebody come to work. Look at these precious babies, as many of them were. All of them were, but some of them, the families had been through a lot already. And to choose to take those young lives when they were just beginning. And the fact that that person happened to train as a nurse, for me, she's no nurse.
There will be an inquiry, but there's pressure for it to be given more power.
I do feel that there needs to be an independent public inquiry, and it needs to be statutory, so that we have the optimum opportunity to call everybody who the authorities feel would be a useful witness, and also to compel people to give evidence under oath.
However, the chief investigator into the Morecambe Bay scandal doesn't share that stance. At least 12 babies and mothers died at Furness General Hospital between 2004 and 2012.
I've done quite a lot of investigations, been associated with quite a lot of investigations. None of them have been able to compel witnesses, but that hasn't been a problem in any of the investigations that I've done.
Similar inquiries have been led by Ian Cohen from Liverpool, including into the organ retention scandal at Alderhay Hospital in the late 90s. He backs the statutory route, but says that alone won't guarantee lessons will be learned.
Unfortunately, all we need to do is look back on history and look at the number of scandals that there have been. And if you're asking me, do I think there will be scandals in the future in relation to the NHS, then tragically I have to say yes.
What should happen then to make sure that history doesn't repeat itself?
First and foremost is the culture within the NHS has to be addressed. there is a culture of, unfortunately, when problems like this occurs, of a cover-up, of attempts to protect individual reputations of managers, perhaps individual doctors.
Dr. Gilby says she saw that culture firsthand during her short time at the Countess. The Letby case has led to calls for more regulation of senior NHS managers.
I think a considered look needs to be made at whether or not a regulatory body would actually make any difference. My personal view at the moment is that I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that it would. There will be other killers in healthcare. How can we spot it more quickly? And how can we really make people feel safe to raise concerns when they think that something like that may be happening in their department?
They are big questions, but unless they're answered and addressed in full, the fear is it may only be a matter of time until another carer becomes a killer. Andrew Mesra, ITV News.
Well, earlier we were joined by Rob Berens. He is the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman. He's already written to the Health Secretary to demand a full statutory inquiry into Letby's crimes.
His role is also to investigate complaints about care from NHS patients and their families. And in June, he reported on a culture of cover-up in the NHS. So I asked him if he believed that culture allowed the murders to happen.
Absolutely. We know from the evidence in court that for 2 years, clinicians were raising patient safety issues about the baby unit. And in the end, horrifically, they were forced to apologise to the nurse for the distress they'd caused her.
And you would describe that as a cover-up?
It is a cover-up, yes. It prevented an investigation by the police for 2 years after it could have begun.
If there was one thing that you could change about the NHS and about the culture in our hospitals, what would it be?
The big need is to change the culture from being defensive, from being concerned about its own reputation, to majoring on patient safety, which is what it's supposed to do.
How are we going to do that?
The big problem is that when people raise patient safety issues, we know that they are blocked and they are threatened and bullied from taking it further by management saying, if you continue with this, it's not only a nuisance, but we're going to report you to your regulatory body. And this is an issue which we have seen time and again in the reports of independent inquiries across the country, in Birmingham, in East Kent, in Shrewsbury, in Bristol. The same thing has happened. When people try to disclose, they are blocked and discouraged.
So how do we change that? Are people safe today, you know, whistleblowers coming forward and talking about issues in the NHS?
Well, whistleblowers themselves do not believe that they are safe to go public, and those that do are in for a long and very difficult road because the law on whistleblowing is too weak and too much in favour of the body against whom the whistle has blown.
So if you'd been one of these consultants desperately trying to blow the whistle here, what would you have done?
Well, I think they behaved with great integrity, and
but it still happened.
It still
a lot
happened,
of people are
indeed,
saying
and
they should have they should have been stronger.
Well,
even.
they were very strong. When you consider that they were threatened and bullied, they did not stop raising the issue. They raised it time and time again, and I think they should be honoured for that.
You've written to the Health Secretary, calling for this investigation, this inquiry to be statutory.
Yes.
Remind us why that's important, why you think that's important.
Well, I've said a number of things to the Health Secretary. First is we must have, in my view, a statutory inquiry, because the difference between that and an independent inquiry is that if people refuse to give evidence, the independent inquiry has no power to force them to do so. And this is such a big, sensitive issue that I believe it's necessary to compel people to come and give evidence.
Just finally, what would you say to the families of these babies tonight, particularly with the view that many of those families are still having to use this hospital? It's
Absolutely.
their local hospital.
The difficult situation they are in is that while being bereaved and grieving, they are still needed to participate in any inquiry so that it is real and has all the information that it needs. And that's a very difficult thing to do, because in general people should not be forced to be grieving and to be concerned about giving evidence to an inquiry. But out of respect to those people, if we don't make this a big national issue, a defining moment in the health service, we will not be paying respect to the children who have died.
Rob Behrens, there we have to leave it. Thank you.
Thank
you. Yeah, it is a case that raises so many very serious issues. In the last hour, the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has been speaking about it. He says he is engaging with families over the best course of action.
As the Prime Minister has said, we'll ensure that the legal framework for that has the full confidence of the families affected, and I'll be engaging with them on that, whether that's on a statutory or non-statutory basis, to ensure that inquiry looking at issues such as whistleblowers and other actions related to this case are fully investigated.
Well, just a reminder that for more on the story, you can download our latest From the North podcast.
Yeah, Gamal joins our reporters Mel Barham and Emma Sweeney, who've been covering the trial from the start. They look at how Letby managed to slip through the net for so long.
That is available to download wherever you get your podcasts from.
Well, now let's move on to other news. And a couple have been found guilty of murdering a man who was shot in the face and doused in acid outside his home in Wigan.
Liam Smith was attacked by Michael Hillier last November. Today, a jury found him guilty of murder alongside his partner Rachel Fulstow, who helped to plan the attack.
Well, let's cross live now to our reporter Victoria Grimes, who is at Manchester Crown Court for us. Vicky, a really shocking case, this.
Yes, Lucy, it is a really, really shocking case, and Liam Smith's family have been in court throughout. It's been a 6 weeks trial, and they've heard often very, very harrowing evidence within that. But today, for them, justice came in the form of these guilty verdicts for Rachel Fulstow and Michael Hillier. Both have been found guilty of murder. They had both denied the murder of Liam Smith. Michael Hillier had previously admitted manslaughter. And the jury today had decided that it wasn't correct that they should deny that. They found them guilty. Liam Smith was found on November the 24th outside his home in Wigan. He'd been shot in the face and doused with acid, later discovered by a local resident. During the trial, Michael Hillier said he and his then-girlfriend Rachel Fulstow had both planned to attack Liam Smith after he said Fulstow had claimed he had raped her. She and Liam Smith had met online in 2019 and had been on a date together in York. She described sex with him as non-consensual, but said she did not describe it as rape. She went for lunch with him the day after, and Liam Smith's family also completely refutes any allegation of that kind from her. Now, she said that she first heard of the attack when Michael Hillier turned up at her house the next morning and told her. She said she was too petrified of him to go to the police. Yet, just days after the killing, she and Michael Hillier went to Jamaica on a 2-week holiday together. Now, she has also been found guilty today of perverting the course of justice.
And Vicky, we've had a statement from the Crown Prosecution Service. What have they had to say?
Well, Andy, they've described this as a brutal killing, and they've said that Hillier and Fulstow planned it and attempted to cover their tracks at every stage. They say that their thoughts tonight are with Liam Smith's family, and they hope that they find some comfort in knowing that his killers have been brought to justice. Rachel Fulstow and Michael Hillier are due to be sentenced at Manchester Mincher Street Crown Court tomorrow.
Vicky, thank you.
Next tonight, enough guns to fill a wheelie bin, thousands of pounds in cash and scores of different drugs.
Yeah, incredibly, these are just some of the things seized by Lancashire's newest police unit, who are working to make the county's roads safer.
Yeah, police say their new roads crime team will crack down on organised crime groups, drug couriers and human traffickers, and will take dangerous weapons off the streets.
Our correspondent Anne O'Connor has more.
Constable Mike Smith, Smithy to his colleagues, is part of the new roads crime team. Today, he's showing us how they work.
We're going to intercept a vehicle that's gone up to Scotland and has come back rather quickly, and a quick turnaround.
So that's
it's
suspicious.
heading back to, yeah, it's heading back towards Lancashire. So we're just making our way up at the top end of M6.
At high speed, in unmarked cars, they're in pursuit.
Pull in behind that van, it's just in front of the van and we'll just sit off it.
Officers themselves pushed for a dedicated team to tackle the organised crime gangs and people traffickers travelling through Lancashire. The rewards have been rich. They've arrested 92 people and seized weapons, including a crossbow and cash, like £250,000 found in a carrier bag on the back seat of a car on the M6 at Leyland.
Here at one of Lancashire Police's evidence stores, there are wheelie bins full of weapons taken from the cross-border criminals targeted in these operations, trying to ferry guns and drugs and cash around the country.
Around about 60 stolen vehicles recovered, more than £300,000 in cash that is the proceeds of crime seized. We've got upwards of £200,000 of drugs seized, that's multi-kilos, so beginning to speak for itself.
On the M6, PC Smith and his colleagues have spotted their target.
Yeah.
You're just here to make sure he doesn't change his mind.
Yeah, just so he doesn't try and get out. Front side, that gap there, please. Okay, I'm PC Smith. I work on the road crime team at Preston. Okay, we're just going to give you a search, okay?
This search finds nothing and the driver is sent on his way. Everyone is safe, including the drivers who had little idea what was going on the road.
If you want to come through Lancashire, we will be onto you. And you will be arrested and we will be taking the proceeds off you.
And the force now has another separate road policing unit which deals with speeding, drink driving and the accidents they cause. Anne O'Connor, ITV News, Lancashire.
OK, there's plenty still ahead on tonight's programme. Coming up.
Still rolling after all these years, we're in Blackpool to say happy birthday to the Big Dipper.
And 12 and 13-year-old Chester and Maisie didn't seem too disappointed with the cloudy skies first thing this morning, but will we need our furry coats as we head closer towards the long weekend? All the detail a little later on.
Thanks, Kerry. Before all that, though, we're going to meet the remarkable woman who has made it her life's mission to try to find a cure for dementia. Helen Beaumont had 2 young children when her husband's behaviour began to change and he started forgetting simple things.
He was forced to leave the parachute regiment when he struggled to read or write. Clive was just 46 when he was diagnosed with early onset dementia and he died 5 years later.
Well, his widow left her home in Oxford to study in Manchester, where she stayed. She's working on breakthroughs in treatments and hoping to find a cure. Dr. Beaumont, as she is now, has been talking to Elaine Wilcox.
I met him at Oxford and he had done a biochemistry degree. He was so active, so lively, so energetic. He was just somebody that you wanted to be close to.
Life became very busy, starting a family, and you started to notice that he wasn't reading to the children.
He absolutely refused to read a bedtime story for the children. Well, it took me years to realise that it wasn't because he didn't want to, it was because he couldn't. Clive was very young to have problems with his cognition. And it wasn't as much recognised then as it is now. But nonetheless, I can't understand why it took us so long to get anywhere. No, he's not depressed. No, he's not having a midlife crisis. He's not having an affair. He doesn't drink a huge amount. There is something physically wrong with this man.
So at what stage was dementia mentioned? It took 5 years?
It took 5 years from that first problem. Eventually, the consultant arranged to telephone me, and he just said, "I'm sorry to tell you that your husband has presenile dementia. There's no cure. We can't do anything for it. I'm so sorry. Goodbye." And we never saw him again.
Clive had been made redundant. There was very little support, very little awareness, and you've written a book about your experience. Has much changed?
I can meet people nowadays where it took 5 years for them to get a diagnosis, and things are changing. But they need to change more, and they need to change faster.
Clive very sadly died at just 51. You waited until the children had grown up, and then you took the decision to go back to university and do a PhD because you were desperate to try and find a cure or treatment.
You talk to anybody who has lived with somebody with dementia, you don't forget about it. I wanted to do something, and I wanted to see if I could help get a better way of diagnosing the illness. So when I was offered a place in Manchester to develop MRI techniques to look at people with dementia, I jumped at it.
Are you optimistic, given the work that you're doing, that we will have a better treatment and possibly a cure?
Yes, absolutely. It's coming. I hope I'll see it, but we're much more aware of what is going on in the brain now. We're much better at finding it than we were.
We see you there. What do you think Clive would make of what you've done?
Knowing Clive, he would probably say, "I never expected anything else."
Dr. Helen Beaumont, my lovely dad has dementia. Thank you for all that you are doing.
I'm so sorry to hear about your father. We hope it will be better for people in future.
Yeah, such a powerful message from Helen there. Lovely interview, Elaine. Thank you for that. Well, now Gamal is looking at what's coming up on the ITV News at 6:30.
Coming up on the evening news, medical history is made as the UK sees its first ever womb transplants. The government announces 7 new special needs schools, but will it be enough to address the national shortage? Is baby formula getting too expensive? We see if mothers should be getting a better deal. And touchdown. India becomes the first country to successfully land a spacecraft on the moon's south pole. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thanks, Kamal. Well, next, the roller coaster that's been thrilling and frightening thrill seekers for 100 years.
Yeah, it is, of course, Blackpool's famous Big Dipper, celebrating its 100th birthday. Incredible. The ride at Blackpool Pleasure Beach cost £25,000 to build. It opened in 1923, making it one of the oldest roller coasters anywhere in the world.
We sent Tim Scott over to Blackpool to mark the Big Dipper's big day.
Here we go, love.
100 years of up and down and round and round. Blackpool's Big Dipper is still pulling in the punters.
For lots of people, it was their first roller coaster, and they rode it when they were kids. They grow up, they have their own kids, and they want to re-ride it. It was one of the first coasters to have what's called upstop wheels in Europe, and what that means is ultimately you can have sharper turns, steeper drops. That makes for a thrilling ride, and that's why 100 years later, people still want to come and ride it.
Modern rides may be steeper, they may be faster, there's some even spin you round and round. But for people who are serious about these things, you really can't beat the thrill of an old school roller coaster like the Big Dipper in Blackpool.
Roller coasters are made of wood, rides are made of steel.
Paul Heaney is from the Roller Coaster Club of Great Britain and has ridden the Big Dipper more times than he cares to remember. He's a huge fan of these old school rides and knows every single inch of them.
It's a wooden roller coaster, an absolute classic. As we go up the lift hill, you can hear the chain and the cogs, which are a safety feature should the train roll back. A wooden roller coaster, when you go over the hill, you get air time where you lift out of the seat, similar to being on the back seat of a car when you go over a...
Is that what you call it, air time?
Air time at the top. And then when you do the drop, you go down and then you get the G-force at the bottom, so you feel yourself being pushed into your seat. Then you get another lift and you go over the top again.
You've been on it hundreds of times though, Paul. Do you not get bored of it?
No, because it's, I mean, if you were doing it every day, possibly you get a bit bored of it like anything. But when you're coming a couple of times, it's the anticipation and just the enjoyment. It's fun. It never goes away.
Here's to another 100 years, I guess.
Well, and for me, hopefully as well.
Tim Scott, ITV News.
Yeah, he didn't get Tim on it though, did he? Now the weather with Kerry.
Why do I need a shower? I've been out in the rain.
The faster you go, the sooner you'll be out. You'll save water too.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Hello, a very good evening to you. Already some sunshine around this week, but also quite a lot of cloud around, not spoiling things too much in Jamie Stewart's photo of the Pebble at Burbo Bank in Merseyside. A big thank you to Jamie, who's 11, for sharing Granada.weather at ITV.com. And Mavis swapped her normal Pennine walk in Darwin for Lytham Jetty earlier on. Definitely some cloud, but also some blue sky there. A big thank you also for sharing. So as we head through into tomorrow, we're basically in between two areas of low pressure, and we do have a weather front which could generate quite a lot of cloud and some showery outbreaks of rain. And then as we head into the holiday weekend, it looks like low pressure is very nearby, bringing us fairly cool conditions, certainly cooler than average, and quite showery conditions. And it does look like this area of high pressure will stay here and fronts will come around it as we head deeper into Sunday and into Monday. So overnight tonight, we've got a weather front already approaching from the southwest, generating a lot of cloud, showery outbreaks of rain, sometimes heavy, a lot of low cloud mist and murk. We're pretty mild and humid overnight tonight, and urban areas not dipping much lower than 16 or 17. So maybe not quite as pretty as Amanda's photo as we head through into tomorrow morning. 6:05 and 8:21 are your sun times. A lot of cloud around, some showery outbreaks of rain, misty and murky over the hills, a mild humid start. A lot fresher as that northwesterly kicks in though for the second half of the day, and a lot drier and brighter, but the temperatures will be below average. Friday sets the scene for the weekend. Sunshine and showers, fairly fresh northwesterly.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Joe Mackenzie tweeted, I first went on the Big Dipper at the age of 10, 47 years ago. Loved it then. My grandparents and parents also loved it. Good night.
Great fun tonight.
How good's that?